Case 1. Natalie Holloway was an 18-year-old girl from Alabama who went with her classmates to Aruba in May 2005 to celebrate finishing high school. This was the start of summer break, and Natalie was excited to enjoy the trip with her friends before beginning the next part of her life. She was kind, bright, and full of college plans. On the last night of the trip, Natalie and her classmates went to a small nightclub in Aruba. When she walked out of the building, she got into a car with a young man named Joran van der Sloot and two other men. This was the last time anyone ever saw her. When Natalie did not come back to her hotel the next morning, her classmates quickly noticed. They knew she was supposed to be on an early flight home, but she did not show up at the airport. Teachers on the trip began searching for her right away. Her mother flew to Aruba the same day, hoping to bring Natalie home safely. Police officers, volunteers, rescue teams, boats, and dogs all searched for her across the island. They checked beaches, water areas, hotels, and empty places. Even with many people looking, no one could find Natalie. Days passed, and still there was no answer. Her case soon became known all over the world. For many years, police in Aruba questioned different people, including Joran van der Sloot, the last person seen with Natalie. He kept changing his story many times, which made it even harder for investigators to understand what happened. Some stories said she walked to the beach. Some stories said she was dropped off at her hotel. None of those details matched the evidence. Even with many interviews, many searches, and help from the United States, Natalie's body was never found. In January 2012, a judge in Alabama officially declared Natalie dead so her family could begin handling legal matters because too much time had passed with no sign of her. A major change happened in 2023. Joran van der Sloot had already been in prison in Peru for killing another woman in 2010. But in 2023, he was moved to the United States to face new charges. These charges were for extortion and wire fraud. He had asked Natalie's mother for $250,000 in exchange for information about where Natalie's remains were. He claimed he knew the location, but investigators later proved he lied to try to take her money. This made the case even more painful for the family, because he gave them false hope when they were already hurting. During the 2023 court process in the United States, Joran finally told the full story. He said he took Natalie to a quiet beach area after leaving the nightclub. He said she refused his advances, and he became angry. He admitted to striking her with a heavy block and placing her body in the ocean. These details matched parts of earlier evidence that police had never been able to confirm. His confession brought answers after 18 years, but the truth was extremely sad. Even with the confession, Natalie's body has still never been found, and there is no way to return her home. Joran van der Sloot pleaded guilty to the extortion charges. A U.S. judge gave him a 20-year sentence, which he will serve at the same time as his sentence in Peru. While the United States cannot charge him with murder for Natalie's death because the crime happened in Aruba, the confession was formally accepted as part of the court record. The judge told Natalie's mother that she finally had the truth, even though it came many years too late. Before we proceed to the next case, please support my channel by liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Thank you very much. Case 2. Jacob Weidman and Eric Kane were two 16-year-old boys who joined the same summer camp trip in 1986. The group planned a long journey that included traveling through Arizona and visiting the Grand Canyon. This was supposed to be an exciting learning experience, filled with hiking, new friendships, and time outdoors. Both boys shared a room during the trip, just as many teenagers do when camps arrange sleeping spaces. But during this trip, something happened that no one expected, and it changed the lives of two families forever. Eric Kane was a friendly boy who loved meeting new people. His parents trusted the camp leaders and believed the trip would be safe. Jacob Weidman, the son of a well-known writer, also joined the program, hoping to grow, learn, and be part of the group. Many kids enjoyed the same activities, and no one noticed anything unusual in the days leading up to the tragedy. For most of the trip, everything seemed normal. The teens explored nearby areas, watched the Arizona landscape, and followed the camp schedule. On the morning of August 13, 1986, everything changed. Eric was found in the room with a stab wound. Camp leaders were shocked. They called for help immediately. The group, made up of young teens, did not understand what had happened. They only knew something terrible had taken place. Eric did not survive his injury. This news brought deep sadness to the entire camp and sent fear through every parent who had sent a child on the trip. While the police began asking questions, they discovered that Jacob was missing. He had left the area with the rented camp car. Reports later confirmed that Jacob drove across state lines, traveling for many hours. His sudden disappearance made investigators fear that he might hurt himself, or someone else, or simply never return. A nationwide search was launched. According to multiple news reports and court records, Jacob eventually stopped in another state and reached out for help. He turned himself in and admitted that he had killed Eric. The story did not get easier to understand from there. When police and doctors interviewed Jacob, he struggled to explain why he committed the act. Unlike many cases where anger, arguments, or plans are involved, this incident had no clear reason. True crime reporters, including those from the Marshall Project, have spent years studying the case. They found that Jacob had spoken in the past about feeling troubled, scared, or overwhelmed. But these feelings did not give a clear reason for the killing. Eric's family was left searching for answers that never fully came. Jacob was taken back to Arizona to face murder charges. Court documents confirmed that Jacob was tried as an adult and eventually sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole. Over the next 30 years, Jacob remained behind bars. The case became well known in newspapers, documentaries, and podcasts because it raised questions about mental health, safety at youth programs, and how courts should treat teenagers who commit serious crimes. In 2016, after many parole hearings, Jacob was finally granted parole. But his freedom did not last long. Less than a year after his release, Jacob was sent back to prison due to a technical violation. Reports from Arizona news outlets explain that he missed a required appointment with his parole officer. He did not commit a new crime, but the missed appointment broke the strict rules of his release. As a result, he returned to prison, where he remained while his legal team continued to challenge the decision. Case 3. The Robisons were a family of 6 who went to their summer cottage in Goodhart, Michigan in June 1968. The cottage sat near the water and was meant to be a quiet place for rest. Richard and Shirley Robison brought their 4 children with them. They had been on this trip many times before, and this visit was supposed to be another peaceful break. But during this summer visit, something very violent happened. No one knew it at the time, but all 6 members of the family were killed inside the cottage. Days passed, then weeks passed, and the cottage stayed silent until the smell from inside spread into the woods. When people went inside on July 22, 1968, they found the bodies of the entire family. Richard was 42, Shirley was 40, and their children were 19-year-old Richard Jr., 16-year-old Gary, 12-year-old Randy, and 7-year-old Susan. Investigators learned that the family had been killed around June 25, almost a month before the bodies were discovered. They learned that each of them had been shot. Some also had injuries from a hammer. The cottage was locked, and nothing important had been taken. Their suitcases, magazines, and everyday items were still around the rooms. Food on the table had not been moved. Toys and clothes were still in place. The quiet cottage painted a clear picture of a family who had been relaxing, only to face an attack that ended all their lives within minutes. The case quickly became one of the largest in Michigan at the time. The Michigan State Police and the Emmett County Sheriff's Office worked together. They spoke to more than 4,000 people as part of the investigation. They did not find the guns or the hammer used in the attack. They looked into the family's life back home. They looked into their work, their money, and their friendships. After months of studying records, checking business details, and listening to different stories, the investigation pointed toward one main suspect, a man named Joseph Scolaro. Scolaro worked closely with Richard in his business. He handled money, supplies, and other important parts of the company. When investigators reviewed the family's business accounts, they found missing funds and confusing numbers. Scolaro's answers did not match the documents they studied. He also could not give a clear, strong alibi for the day the family died. On top of that, he owned guns similar to the ones used in the attack. When he was questioned, he took lie detector tests more than once, and he failed them. These problems made him the person investigators believed was most likely responsible. Even with this evidence, the case did not move quickly. Michigan law requires strong proof before charges can be filed, especially in a case involving an entire family. Investigators continued to build their case. They gathered reports and prepared documents so they could take the next step. But before they could bring charges to court, something happened that changed the path of the case. On March 8, 1973, almost 5 years after the killings, Scalaro took his own life at a gun store. He left notes saying he did not harm the Robeson family, but investigators still believed he was responsible. His death meant the case could not move forward in court. If you found this video interesting so far, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for your support. Case 4. Marie Liljenberg and Maria Wallin, two young women from Sweden who started a summer trip to the United States in 1983. They were both 21 years old and full of excitement. They wanted to see California, meet new people, and enjoy the warm weather. Their plan was simple: move from place to place by hitchhiking and explore as much as they could. They wrote in their diary, took photos along the road, and shared many happy moments. Their trip was meant to be fun and full of adventure. But during that same summer, something very sad happened that changed everything. In July 1983, Marie and Maria were seen hitchhiking from Redwood City toward Los Angeles. Many travelers used the same road during the summer, so seeing them there was not unusual. They carried their backpacks and smiled as they waited for a safe ride. That moment was the last confirmed sighting of them alive. After that day, no one knew where they went or who picked them up. When they did not contact their families or continue their travel plans, concern grew quickly. People began looking for the two young women, hoping they were safe. On August 18, 1983, a group of hikers walked through a quiet area of the Los Padres National Forest in Santa Barbara County. As they moved along the trail, they saw something on the ground that should not have been there. It was the bodies of Marie and Maria. The hikers alerted the police right away. When officers arrived, they confirmed that the women had been killed. Both had been sexually assaulted and stabbed. Their bodies had been placed off a rural road inside the forest. The scene showed that the crime was violent, and it appeared the women had been moved from another location. Police began looking for answers right away. They collected the women's personal items, including a diary and a camera. These helped show the path the two had taken during their trip and the places they had visited. Investigators spoke with people in nearby towns, hoping someone had seen them with a driver or noticed something unusual. But the forest area was very quiet, and there were no witnesses. There was no clear sign of the person who had picked them up. Because the crime took place far from busy roads, very little evidence could be found. The case reached Sweden, where the families of Marie and Maria were waiting for news. The loss was painful for both families and for people across Sweden who followed the story. They had hoped the young women would return home with stories and photos. Instead, they received heartbreaking news. The case also caught attention in the United States, where many travelers used hitchhiking during the summer months. People began talking about the risks of getting into cars with strangers, even when everything seemed safe. The story of Marie and Maria became an example of why travelers must be careful, especially in quiet or remote places. For investigators, the case continued, but progress remained slow. There were no fingerprints, no eyewitnesses, and no clear path showing what happened in the hours before the women were killed. For years, detectives kept the case open. They followed tips, spoke with people who lived in the forest area, and checked if the crime matched any other cases in California. Even with this work, no one was arrested. In 1991, 8 years after the crime, police received an anonymous call. The caller said a certain man may have been responsible for killing Marie and Maria. This man had already died at that time. The caller hung up before giving more details. Police tried to trace the call and learn more about the man mentioned. But without the caller's identity or more evidence, They could not move forward. The information pointed to a possible suspect, but it was not enough to solve the case. Case 5. Emmett Till was a 14-year-old boy who left his home in Chicago in August 1955 to visit his family in Money, Mississippi. He was excited for the trip. He wanted to see his cousins, meet new people, and enjoy his summer break. His mother, Mamie Till Mobley, loved him deeply and trusted that he would be safe with relatives. No one imagined that this simple vacation would become one of the most painful and important stories in American history. During his stay, Emmett went to a small store owned by a man named Roy Bryant. At the counter that day was Bryant's wife, Carolyn. A brief exchange happened between her and Emmett. Reports about what happened in the store changed many times over the years. The FBI, historians, and the Library of Congress all note that witnesses gave different versions of what Emmett said or did, but none of the stories ever justified what happened next. A few nights later, on August 28, 1955, Roy Bryant and his half-brother, J.W. Milam, went to the home of Emmett's great-uncle, Moses Wright. They arrived very early in the morning. They forced Emmett out of the house while his aunt and uncle tried to protect him. Moses Wright bravely pointed to the men later in court, showing the world exactly who had taken Emmett. The men put Emmett in a truck and drove him away. According to the later confession published in Look magazine in 1956, they beat him, shot him, and tied a heavy metal fan to his body with wire. They threw him into the Tallahatchie River. When Emmett's body was found 3 days later, the injuries were so severe that Moses Wright could only identify him because of a ring on his finger. The FBI and DOJ investigations, along with reports from the Chicago Tribune and Library of Congress archives, all confirm these major events. When Emmett's body was returned to Chicago, his mother made a brave and powerful decision. She asked for an open casket funeral because she wanted the world to see what had been done to her son. She said, "Let the world see what I have seen." Thousands of people attended the funeral. Photos published in Jet magazine shocked the nation and helped people understand the cruelty behind the crime. Historians widely agree that this moment helped awaken a new wave of courage within the civil rights movement. In September 1955, Roy Bryant and J.W. Milam were placed on trial for Emmett's murder. The courtroom was filled with national reporters, and people across the country closely followed the case. Despite the evidence, despite Moses Wright's brave testimony, and despite the enormous public attention, the all-white, all-male jury said the men were not guilty. According to the Equal Justice Initiative and major news archives, the jury reached its decision after approximately 67 minutes. In January 1956, months after their acquittal, Bryant and Milam told journalist William Bradford Huey in a Look magazine interview that they had killed Emmett Till. They were paid for the interview. Because they had already been tried and found not guilty, they could not be tried again for the same crime. This confession is one of the most widely cited pieces of evidence showing exactly what happened. Emmett's story changed the country. Only months after his murder, Rosa Parks said that she thought of Emmett when she refused to give up her seat on a bus in Montgomery, Alabama. Children and adults across the nation began to demand fairness, equal treatment, and safety for everyone. His name became a symbol of courage, truth, and the fight for justice. Case 6. Grace Millane loved going on summer trips to warm, bright places. She enjoyed the sunshine, the long days, and the joy of exploring new countries during the summer season. In late 2018, while many travelers were enjoying summer weather in the Southern Hemisphere, Grace decided to visit New Zealand. She reached Auckland on November 30, 2018, during their warm summer period. She looked forward to walking in the sun, meeting new people, and celebrating her upcoming birthday during her summer holiday. While enjoying the start of her summer adventure, Grace used a dating app to meet others in the city. On the evening of December 1, 2018, she matched with a man named Jesse Shane Kempson and agreed to go out with him. Cameras in the area showed her spending the evening smiling, talking, and walking through the warm summer streets of Auckland. The city was lively, and people were outside enjoying the weather. Grace and Jesse later entered the City Life Hotel together, which became the last confirmed sighting of her alive. Grace's birthday was December 2nd, and her family expected to hear from her as she enjoyed her summer trip. But when the day passed without a message, they knew something was wrong. Grace always contacted her family, no matter where she traveled. When the silence continued into the next day, her parents reached out to the New Zealand police. Officers began their search, using camera recordings and hotel records to understand her last movements during those warm summer nights. On December 8th, police announced that they believed Grace had died. That same day, they arrested 27-year-old Jesse Kempson, the man she had met on her date. Even after his arrest, police continued looking for Grace. On December 9th, during a warm summer morning, her body was found in the Waitakere Ranges, a forested area west of Auckland. Grace's parents had flown from England to help with the search, and they were heartbroken when police shared the news. During the trial in November 2019, the court learned that Grace died inside the hotel room on the night of December 1st, shortly after her date with Jesse. He claimed the death was an accident, but the evidence did not support his explanation. Instead, the information showed actions that caused her death. The jury listened to all the evidence from that summer night and reached a verdict on November 22, 2019. Jesse Kempson was guilty of murder. Grace's parents, who had traveled across the world, sat in court as the truth of her final summer trip was explained. In February 2020, Jesse Kempson was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 17 years before he can ask for parole. Because of New Zealand laws, his name was kept private during the early stages of the case. Months later, after the name restrictions were lifted, the public learned who he was and learned about his past, which included harmful behavior toward other women. This added more pain for Grace's family because it showed she was not the only person he had hurt. Case 7. Cassandre Bouvier and Huria Moumni began their summer trip from France with happy hearts and simple plans. Cassandre was 29, and Huria was 23. They both loved learning, traveling, and seeing new places. During that summer in 2011, they decided to explore South America. They flew from France to Argentina, hoping to enjoy the warm weather, the open spaces, and the chance to walk through beautiful nature. Their families knew this was a dream trip for them, a chance to grow and experience the world together. But the summer adventure they looked forward to soon turned into a heartbreaking story that shocked people across two countries. On July 16, 2011, Cassandre and Huria left their hostel in Salta to go hiking in the Quebrada de San Lorenzo, a quiet nature area not far from the city. They packed lightly and expected a simple day outdoors. They wanted fresh air, sunshine, and the joy of exploring a place they had never seen before. They had already traveled far from France, and this walk was meant to be another happy memory from their summer trip. But when they did not return to their hostel later that day, concern began to grow. Days passed with no news. Their families in France waited for updates, hoping the two friends would soon be found safe. But on July 29, 2011, almost 2 weeks after they were last seen, police officers searching the nature area discovered their bodies. Reports showed that both young women had been shot, and one had been sexually assaulted. The news spread quickly because Cassandre and Huria were not just visitors. They were young travelers from another part of the world who only wanted to enjoy their summer holiday. The police launched a large investigation to understand what happened. Officers walked through the area, searched the trails, and gathered every clue they could. At different times, around 8 people were detained for questioning. Some were released, and some were kept longer as police tried to gather enough evidence. Their goal was simple: find the person responsible for ending the summer trip of 2 innocent young women who had traveled all the way from France. One of the most important clues came from DNA found at the scene. News reports explained that this DNA matched a local tour guide. This match became a turning point in the case. It helped investigators connect the evidence to a person and push the case forward. Cassandre and Huria's families watched closely from France, following every update. They had sent their daughters on a summer trip to learn, grow, and enjoy the world. Now, they waited for justice. After a long investigation and many court hearings, the case finally reached a clear answer. In 2014, a man named Santos Clemente Vera was found guilty of killing Cassandra and Huria. He was sentenced to 30 years in prison, according to major international news reports. This decision brought some relief to the families, who had waited years for justice. Even though nothing could bring back their loved ones, knowing the killer's name and seeing him held responsible helped give them a sense of peace. Cassandra and Huria's summer trip began with excitement and hope, but it ended in a way no one expected. Their story touched people in France, Argentina, and many other places around the world. Case 8. Michaela McAreevy started her summer trip with joy in her heart. She was a 27-year-old teacher from Ireland who had just married the man she loved. In January 2011, she and her husband, John, traveled to Mauritius for their honeymoon. This holiday was meant to be a peaceful start to their new life together. The island was known for warm beaches, beautiful water, and quiet resorts. Michaela and John chose the Legends Hotel, a place many people saw as safe and relaxing. But on January 10, 2011, the happiness of their trip came to a sudden and heartbreaking end. Earlier that day, Michaela and John had enjoyed lunch with each other. After eating, Michaela returned to their room alone to get a snack. She used her key and walked inside their room, thinking everything was normal. But reports from investigators say 2 hotel workers were already in the room. They were not there for cleaning or hotel duties. The investigation later suggested that they were looking for money they believed was hidden inside the room. When Michaela walked in and saw them, she became an unexpected witness. Moments later, she was attacked. She was found dead in the bathtub, with the water running, and the cause of death was strangulation. John waited for her at the restaurant. When Michaela did not return, he became worried. He searched for her and finally went back to their room. There, he found the door slightly open. Inside, he discovered his wife in the bathtub and called for help. The shock of the moment left him devastated. Hotel staff and doctors rushed to the scene, but it was too late to save her. The news spread quickly, both in Mauritius and back in Ireland, where Michaela's family had just celebrated her wedding only days earlier. Police officers began working on the case immediately. They entered the hotel room, studied the scene, collected evidence, and questioned workers. The resort was full of holiday visitors from around the world, so the investigation was large and carefully planned. Hotel records showed which staff members had access to the room. Security logs, room key data, and statements from workers helped guide investigators toward 2 men employed at the hotel, Avinash Tribhuwan and Sandip Monia. The 2 employees were soon arrested and charged. The trial that followed became one of the most closely watched cases in both Ireland and Mauritius. Michaela's family traveled from Ireland to attend the hearings. They sat in the courtroom day after day, listening to witnesses describe what they knew. They wanted clear answers about how their daughter's life had been taken while she was on her honeymoon. Prosecutors explained that Michaela had walked in on a robbery and that the 2 workers attacked her to stop her from calling for help. Evidence from the room, including keycard records, placed the men inside the area around the time she died. But the defense denied these claims. They stated that the men were innocent and argued that the evidence was not strong enough to prove guilt. The trial lasted several weeks. Witnesses included hotel staff, police officers, and specialists who explained how keycard systems worked and how the body was found. Every detail was discussed, as the courtroom aimed to understand the full truth of what had happened inside the hotel room on January 10th. In July 2012, the jury reached its decision. Both men were found not guilty. This verdict stunned many people, including Michaela's family. They said they were heartbroken by the outcome and believed justice had not been served. They returned to Ireland carrying the weight of a tragedy that remained unanswered. Even though the courtroom chapter ended, the case itself stayed open in the minds of investigators and in the hearts of the McAreevy and Hart families. Over the years, Mauritian police continued to review evidence, hoping that new information could lead to a clearer answer. Michaela's husband, John, has continued to speak about her life, her kindness, and his hope for justice. Irish leaders have also asked Mauritian officials to keep the investigation active. As of today, No one has been convicted of her murder. Case 9. Courtney Wilks went on a summer trip with her family to Seagrove Beach, Florida, in June 2011. She was excited to be there. The warm sand, the open water, and the peaceful shore made the vacation feel perfect. Courtney loved spending time with her parents and sisters, and the trip was meant to be full of joy. But in just one afternoon, everything changed. What should have been a normal summer walk turned into one of the most heartbreaking cases in Florida. On June 16, 2011, Courtney walked along the beach close to the resort where her family was staying. People later said they saw her walking with a young man named Stephen Anthony Causey. He was 21 years old at the time. Courtney did not know him well. The two were seen walking away from the beach area, and they were the last people seen together before she disappeared. When Courtney did not return, her family quickly became worried. They contacted the authorities, and law officers began searching for her right away. Teams searched the beach area, the woods, and nearby paths. Only a few hours after Courtney was reported missing, her body was found in a wooded area close to the beach. According to official reports and later court documents, Courtney had been strangled and had suffered fatal head injuries. The details were painful for everyone who heard the news. Law officers moved fast, and within a short time, Causey was arrested as the main suspect. Witnesses confirmed that he was the last person seen with her. Investigators gathered evidence that connected Causey to the killing. They learned that he had led Courtney away from the beach and into a hidden area. The Walton County Sheriff's Office, along with Florida investigators, built the case based on witness statements, physical evidence, and Causey's own behavior after the crime. He was charged with murder, kidnapping, sexual battery, and child abuse. These charges showed how serious the case was and how much harm had been done. As the case moved toward trial, the community in Florida and Courtney's hometown in Georgia came together to support her family. Courtney had been known for her kindness, good grades, and strong love for her family. Many people followed the case closely, wanting justice for her. The courtroom was filled with reporters, lawyers, and people who cared deeply about the outcome. In June 2013, after hearing the evidence and listening to the witnesses, a jury found Causey guilty on all charges. The jurors agreed that the crime was planned and extremely violent. After the conviction, the judge reviewed the case carefully. In October 2013, Causey received the death sentence, following the jury's unanimous recommendation. He remains on death row today. News reports from the time explained that the judge believed the crime showed clear intent and severe harm, and that the punishment reflected the seriousness of what had happened. Case 10. Barbara Nante began her summer trip with excitement and hope. She was only 15 years old in August 1978, and she wanted to enjoy a warm evening with her boyfriend, 17-year-old Jim Alt, at Torrey Pines State Beach in San Diego, California. The beach was a popular place for young people to relax, talk, and enjoy the quiet sound of the ocean. Barbara and Jim planned to spend the night lying on the sand, watching the sky and listening to the waves. But their peaceful summer outing ended in a horrifying way that would become one of San Diego's most painful unsolved murder cases. On the early morning of August 13, 1978, Barbara was found dead on the sand. She had been beaten and strangled, and her body showed clear signs of a violent attack. The discovery shocked everyone who lived near the beach. Barbara was a cheerful teenager with her whole life ahead of her. What happened to her made families across the city feel unsafe, and the police knew immediately that the case needed careful, serious attention. Jim was found close by, barely conscious. He had a severe head injury that left him confused and unable to remember anything about the attack. His memory loss made the investigation extremely difficult. He could not explain who hurt them or what had happened during the night. This meant the police had no witness who could point to a suspect. Jim survived, but the trauma of that night has stayed with him for the rest of his life. Police arrived quickly and began searching the area. They studied the sand, checked for footprints, collected Barbara's clothing, and gathered every possible clue. Investigators later explained that the teens were likely attacked while lying together on the beach, but even with this information, the case had no obvious direction. No clear tracks were leading away from the scene, and no one nearby had seen or heard the attack take place. The case soon became one of the most troubling mysteries in San Diego. Detectives worked day after day trying to connect the pieces. They interviewed people who lived near the beach, people who visited often, and anyone who might have seen something unusual that night. But no strong lead ever appeared. Without a clear suspect, the case slowly grew cold. For Barbara's family, the lack of answers was heartbreaking. Years passed, but the police did not forget Barbara. The case remained active in the cold case division, and detectives continued to review the evidence. They hoped that new technology, especially improvements in DNA testing, would one day point to someone responsible. Items from the crime scene were preserved carefully so they could be re-examined whenever better tools became available. The case gained even more attention in 1984, when another young girl named Claire Houff, only 14 years old, was found dead on the same beach. Her injuries were also severe and showed signs of a violent attack. While the cases have similarities, authorities have never confirmed a direct connection, but many people still wonder if the two cases could be linked. The second murder reminded the community of Barbara's case and pushed investigators to take another deep look at both crime scenes. Over the years, police have released public statements asking for new information. They believe someone, somewhere, might know something important, something they didn't realize mattered back in 1978. Detectives have said that even a small detail could finally unlock the truth about what happened to Barbara. Her family continues to hope that one day the right piece of evidence will point clearly to the person responsible. Case 11. Adam Lloyd and Vanessa Arscott were a young British couple who loved going on summer trips together. In 2004, they planned a long holiday in Thailand, a place known for warm weather, friendly towns, and beautiful rivers. They spent nearly 2 months traveling through the country, enjoying their time in the sunshine, meeting local people, and taking pictures of the bright summer scenery. By September, their holiday was almost over, and they were preparing to return home. But on September 9, 2004, while they were finishing their trip near the town of Kanchanaburi, everything changed suddenly and heartbreakingly. That night, Adam and Vanessa visited a small restaurant to enjoy one of their final meals before going home. A local man named Somchai Visetsing, who was an off-duty police sergeant, was also there. After Adam and Vanessa left the restaurant, a short disagreement began between them and the officer. The exact cause of the argument was never fully understood, but what happened next shocked both their families and people across the world. As Adam and Vanessa walked along the road, the officer got into his car and followed them. The situation quickly became dangerous. Witnesses later explained that the officer shot Adam several times along the roadside. When Vanessa saw Adam fall, she tried to run for safety, hoping to escape and find help, but the officer chased her in his car, hitting her with the vehicle and then shooting her as well. Both Adam and Vanessa were rushed to a nearby hospital, but the injuries were too severe, and they passed away shortly after. What was supposed to be a peaceful summer night became a tragic event that ended 2 young lives far from home. When word spread about what had happened, Thai authorities began searching for the officer responsible. But he had already run away, crossing into the nearby country of Myanmar within hours of the shootings. This escape sparked international attention. British officials contacted Thai authorities, and both countries worked together to bring the man back. News outlets across the world reported on the case, describing the couple's final hours and the urgent search for the suspect. After several months on the run, the officer returned to Thailand. He was taken into custody and later faced trial for the deaths of Adam and Vanessa. The court examined witness statements, medical reports, and details about what had happened on that September night. In May 2005, the court found him guilty of killing both Adam and Vanessa. At first, he was given the death sentence, which is the severest punishment in Thailand. But this sentence was later changed to life in prison. The change happened because he returned to Thailand and cooperated with the authorities, and the court considered those actions when deciding his final punishment. The families of Adam and Vanessa traveled to Thailand during the court hearings. They listened to the details of how their children spent their final moments during what was meant to be a safe and joyful summer holiday. Though the court's decision brought a sense of justice, the families shared that nothing could fill the emptiness left behind. Adam and Vanessa had been young, kind, and full of dreams. Their friends said they were excited to return home and share stories from their trip. Instead, their story became a reminder of how quickly danger can appear, even in places filled with sunshine and beauty. Kanchanaburi, where the incident happened, is known for its peaceful river views and the famous bridge that many tourists visit. But after September 2004, the town became linked to Adam and Vanessa's story. Many travelers learned about the case and were reminded to stay alert, even during summer trips that feel calm and carefree. Travel groups and safety organizations discussed the case, hoping to help others avoid similar dangers. Case 12. Victoria Cafasso was a 20-year-old British-Italian tourist who traveled to Tasmania for a peaceful summer holiday in October 1995. Even though October is autumn in Europe, it marks the start of warm weather in Australia. Victoria wanted to enjoy the sunshine, take long beach walks, spend time with her family, and rest before returning to her studies. She had been in Tasmania for less than a week when she visited Beaumaris Beach, a quiet place known for soft sand and gentle waves. It was meant to be a calm and happy day during her summer break. But on October 11, 1995, her trip took a tragic turn that remains unsolved nearly 30 years later. On the morning of the attack, people relaxing on the beach saw Victoria walking along the shoreline. There were around 50 people in the area that day, enjoying the warm weather. Victoria found a quiet spot near Freshwater Creek, away from the busier parts of the beach. At some point while she was alone, a person approached her. No one knows exactly how the attack began, because no one saw the full incident. A short time later, a person who was out for a walk discovered Victoria's body on the sand. She had suffered many stab wounds, and her belongings were scattered nearby, showing she had tried to protect herself. Police were called right away. Officers from Tasmania Police secured the area and began looking for clues. They studied footprints in the sand, tire marks, and items found close to the scene. They also checked the beach carefully to understand where the attacker might have run or driven. The attack took place during the day, which made the case even more confusing. How could someone attack a young woman on a summer beach while other people were around, yet escape without being seen clearly? Investigators spoke with everyone who had been at the beach. Some people reported seeing a man in the area who seemed out of place. Others mentioned a light-colored Subaru station wagon parked nearby. These details helped create a picture of possible suspects, but none of the leads resulted in enough proof to make an arrest. The weapon used in the attack was never found. Even with all the interviews, physical evidence, and hard work from detectives, the identity of the attacker remained unknown. Victoria's family in Europe received the heartbreaking news soon after the attack. She had come to Tasmania to enjoy a quiet summer holiday, only for her life to be cut short suddenly and violently. Her family described her as gentle, smart, and full of hope. She was excited about her future, and she loved exploring new places. Losing her in such a painful and mysterious way left a deep wound in the hearts of the people who knew her. As months passed, Tasmania police continued working on the case. They returned to the beach many times, searched nearby bushland, and reviewed every detail they had collected. They compared fingerprints, tested fabric fibers, and checked old statements again and again. They followed leads from people who believed they had seen someone suspicious. They even investigated travelers who had left the area shortly after the attack. The case became one of the most talked about mysteries in Tasmania. Over the years, the government has increased the reward for information several times. The most recent announcement, made nearly 30 years after the attack, raised the reward to $1 million Australian dollars, the largest reward ever offered in Tasmania. Police hope this will encourage someone to come forward even if many years have passed. According to investigators, even a small detail remembered by a witness could be the missing piece needed to solve the case. Case 13. George Smith was on his honeymoon with his new wife in July 2005. They were sailing on a big cruise ship called Brilliance of the Seas, which belonged to Royal Caribbean. The trip was meant to be a happy summer holiday across the Mediterranean. Many couples choose a cruise to relax, enjoy the sun, and spend quiet time together. But for George, this trip turned into one of the most talked about mysteries in modern cruise history. On July 5, 2005, George was suddenly missing. One night, he was seen around the ship with a small group of young men, and by morning, he was gone. His room showed signs that something serious had happened, and a large mark of blood was found on a lifeboat canopy right under his balcony. Before George disappeared, he had spent part of the night with several young men he had met during the trip. They were seen drinking together and walking around the ship. These men became some of the last people known to be with him. When the crew discovered that George was missing, they alerted the authorities. The ship searched for him at sea, but there was no sign of him anywhere. His body was never found. When investigators looked inside his cabin, they saw things that made them think something harmful may have happened. The bed sheets were messy, some items were out of place, and the scene made people wonder if there had been a struggle. The mark of blood found on the lifeboat roof added even more worry. It was directly below his balcony, making many people think he had gone over the rail during the night. The FBI became very involved once the ship returned to shore. They spent years trying to find answers. They studied every detail they could gather from the ship's staff, the passengers, and the group of young men who had been with George. They also reviewed videos taken by passengers. One video stood out. Just hours after George disappeared, some of the young men made a recording where they made comments that upset many viewers. This video did not give proof of any crime, but it raised big questions about what the men knew and what may have happened before George vanished. Investigators tried to understand the timeline of George's final hours, including when he left a casino, who walked with him, and when he was last seen awake. The case drew attention around the world. Cruise ships are often seen as safe and peaceful, so a disappearance like this made people uneasy. Reporters followed the story for years, and George's family pushed for answers. They wanted to know how a healthy young man could vanish from a busy ship without anyone seeing what happened. The ship had many people on board, including staff who cleaned rooms, served food, and watched over different parts of the vessel. Still, no one could give a clear explanation. Some people believed he may have fallen by accident. Others believed someone may have pushed him. There were many ideas, but none of them could be proven. The FBI spent almost 10 years working on the case. They interviewed people many times. They checked the physical evidence again and again. They looked at every video they could find. But even with all that work, they could not reach a final answer. On January 9, 2015, the FBI closed the investigation. They explained that there was not enough proof to say a crime had taken place, and not enough proof to charge anyone with harming George. Even though the official investigation ended, the mystery did not. George's family still believes someone knows what happened. They hope that one day a person will speak up or new evidence will appear. If you enjoyed watching this crime documentary, please subscribe to my channel. I create and post interesting true crime videos on the channel every day. Thank you for watching.